Welcome, Sahar. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm okay. Had quite a long week, but and I have a lot of plans coming along, so my mind is bursting all over. But this is a good respite, and it's an exciting thing to do. So yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Great to hear. It's great to be here in beautiful Malta.
This is a gorgeous country, isn't it? Yes.
So can you please introduce yourself?
Well, my birth name is Marton. And the second name is Saliba, which ironically means son of the cross. It's from Lebanese origins, so yeah, it's an interesting name to have in my little world. But for the most part, I am mostly known outside, my little private life. Of course, I am mostly known as Sahar, which shorthand translation, it means either wizard or warlock. Take it, you can choose which one you want, but. You will go with warlock because it's more menacing, Dungeons and Dragons characters will certainly understand that. But that's what my persona is mostly known, because I've been doing this since 2006, and I think since 2014, 15, it's kind of like skyrocketed more than it did before. So at this point in time, this guy is Sahar, and everything else is secondary. I have obviously a private life. I have a family. I have a wife and a kid and a bunch of dogs, an apartment and bills and debt. who doesn't, I guess? But but Sahar is what I dedicated more than half my life for at this point in time. And I've been releasing on average something like at least once a year, be it an EP or be it an album. With almost enough live shows at this point in time to match. I try not to overdo it because, well, we're a small country, so I don't want to you don't want to see this face too long, especially on that stage there. You want to leave people wanting more, and that's about it, I think.
Yeah. Can you tell us about your musical career up to today?
Well. A career is a strong word, but originally I was classically trained in piano and classical music theory from a very, very, very young age, and eventually when the GCEs and all that kind of took over, I had to drop that. But after that, I took guitar, and I was really of course listening to metal by that point in time, and I mark the start of, shall we can say my music career in 2006, because that's when I released hand trade type thing, because CDs to my friends and peers type thing. But that happened in mid 2006, and that's where I consider the first milestone and where it took off.
Did you play the same type of metal you do?
Yeah, pretty much. Maybe it was a bit more primitive, I suppose, and the approach to record it and how to write it was very different than what I do nowadays. But fundamentally, it was always black metal. That's where always the backbone of my music and the largest chunk of it goes through. I had several projects over the years, but some of them either fumbled or others have a question mark on an expiry date type thing, because I don't really know where they were going for. But Sahar has always been constant from 2006 till, well, there was a bit of a gap between 2010 to 2013, but for the most part, despite that small gap, I'm more than compensated for that. And between that and live shows, which started in 2015, I would say that Sahar encompasses most of it, and it's most of the energies of more of my energy, which goes into it. I had several other shows, maybe a guest appearance here or something there, maybe contributed to some songwriting or recording, or even producing albums for other people. But I still say that easily 80-90% of what I do is always down to Sahar and black metal, frankly.
Nice. And you have always been a one-man band?
Yes, pretty much. Yeah. At least in the studio, let's put it that way, because on stage I have sessionists sometimes. Sometimes I just hit the stage on my own. It happened before, and I'm planning to do it again because it was surprisingly well received. But yeah, in the studio from A to Z, sometimes maybe I delegate or hire somebody to do my artworks at best, but even that, for the most part, it's my doing. So layout, designs, music, production, nice. A to Z. You know, it's not that I don't trust people or something like that. You know, I don't want to sound like a dickhead or anything, but I have a vision and I have a direction, and I want it to be done at a certain point in time within my expectations, within what I want, because then I know that I'm going to move on to the next. If I already have done that, it's not the first time. I'm still working on finishing this album, like songwriting for the next thing to go. So you can only have so much people involved in it. I do. Outside the core music thing, I do currently have a manager which helps me in some of my bookings, and then there's my wife, which does a lot of legwork underneath, especially. But when it comes to at least the creative process, yeah, it has always been me, and I think it will remain like that for a long time, because now I have a system and I have a workflow which simply works for me.
Cool. And is it the 7th album has come out just recently?
The next one.
The next one?
Yeah, because the last one was a remix, so it's a gray area how it counts, because I just remixed the whole album from scratch, mostly because to avoid like copyright reasons and stuff like that, because, well, it happens. People have fallouts with previous people that I collaborated with. Then I went like, you know what, I want this out and I want to make it fresh. It deserves a new sound, because obviously, since I do everything myself, including production, I learned a lot how to produce better as time goes by, and yeah, you know, a little bit of a facelift, so to speak. So, but the next one would be the 7th one. It will come out this year. It's gonna be, I think, my largest release since Climate Mim, which came out in 2017, and yeah, I mean, who's counting really? Because then there's EPs in between, and there's splits, and sometimes there's, like I mentioned, remixes and whatnot. So at this point in time, it's something to the tune of 14 or 15 releases overall. Like on the Metal Archive list, it's just endless. Yeah,
I've been listening to your latest. Is it called Difna?
Difna Flimfern. Yes, that's the remixed album, which I have that version. It's still available on Bandcamp and some other places, but not on the digital streaming platforms. Some people own the old one as a physical copy. This one has no physical copy, unfortunately. Yeah, it's again, it's a remix version. It's a concept album of sorts. It retakes some versions from Dante's Inferno, when I took a little flair on it, like a personal flair to it. You know, I don't want to just go like copy paste, just translate the script. Yeah. You know, even the next album has a similar approach to it, except it's more locally grown. Even the theme behind it. But yeah, that thing had this little story about this guy which ended up being in hell and tried to escape, and obviously fails. Yeah. You know, no happy endings.
No, because it was so funny. You wrote on Instagram, I think just the other day, that you were so sick of the album, but not too sick.
Not too sick. No. With Climate Mim, yeah, because that thing, I kept dredging myself around it for like way over 18 months. Yeah. And eventually I went like, you know what? I cannot. It has to stop. It has to come out. It has to come out. I already had another 2 in the pipeline coming out. Yeah. You know, I cannot just keep getting lost. Okay, it's a huge album. It's over 70 minutes, so that's like it filled the CD limit to the brim. But I couldn't just carry on that one, you know, because mind you, the effort paid off. Mm-hmm. So I still really think good. It's one of my most well-received albums in the long run when it comes to responses, approaches, sales, whichever metric you want to choose. I still think it's one of the best which came out, so I am proud of that release, of course.
It's really good. Congratulations on that. And I was thinking about the genre. I've never seen that before, and I was laughing a little bit when I read it also. It's like you write runes black metal.
Yes.
That's the genre you would say is like, sounds cool.
It's a marketing moniker, to be honest.
All right.
Because whenever I'm asked what genre do I play, I always simply say I play black metal.
Yeah.
I write, compose, and publish black metal. That's what I do. Sure, it can get more slow tempo, doom elements might come in, symphonic elements are obviously in a lot of my releases. Sometimes it can go really fast, maybe with some thrash elements in it. You mention it, the influences are there. But honestly, it's black metal, that's what it is. It's just different flares of it, different approaches to it, and the Ruinous title fits in the approach of what music I write, but again, it's mostly like a marketing thing. I suppose you can call it a gimmick if you'd like,
Yeah.
But it does help to stand out a bit. It does help, because if you say I'm just black metal, that means I'm 1 in a million. Ruinous black metal, maybe I'm 1 in 1,000.
Yeah. But how would you say what inspires you and what bands? Is we're talking a little bit about?
It varies. It varies from album to album. The first albums were heavily influenced by bands like Marduk and Dark Funeral, basically Swedish black metal for the most part. But later albums were influenced by more Norwegian types. More recent albums have been influenced from Polish or Ukrainian or Czech black metal, like exactly Behemoth, Mikuła, Batushka, you mentioned it.
Oh yeah.
And again, when I'm during that phase where I'm sitting down like, okay, now it's time to write music, usually I listen to nothing.
Right.
So so maybe it doesn't carry over too much into my music, you know. So, or at least that's the idea. Of course, the music will remain there. If I listen to 1,000 songs, all those 1,000 songs are somewhere there brewing and helping to create the music I'm obviously writing. But if in the morning I'm listening to, say, Inquisition's last album, followed by Gorgoroth's previous album, and then in the evening, of course, there's going to be influenced by them directly. So I try to avoid that. At least musically speaking, that's my approach to do it. I'm not sure if it works or not. I'm always satisfied with the results that's come out, and I don't think it's too much of or at all like a copying of another. I don't think at all. On the lyrical side, on the other hand, usually I have a preset approach towards it. Like I mentioned, like Definitely Inferno, obviously the remix is one-on-one with the original, and that thing had this Dante's Inferno theme going along with it. Then there was, for instance, Tijrift al-Junus, which was basically a study about genocides and massacres with music to accompany it. That's what it was. Klimet Mim was basically a study of death. That's what it was, from a social approach, from a cultural approach, not so much as a religious approach. We're not talking about afterlives and stuff like that. I don't go that far in that album, but it is, for all intents and purposes, about death, the moments before death and during death. So that's a theme, and I just keep expanding and creating chapters and chapters out of it. Illa Tal-Ron, on the other hand, I went like, let's create a spicy album here. Let's do something which, the blasphemy laws fell in Malta around those times, and okay, I could have went all out and just basically wrote all the blasphemies we have in our language and called it a day, which is obviously a low-hanging fruit, so I did not do that. But all the words and all the themes and they're all hinting towards at least a nuanced level of blasphemy and something against the religious dogmatic system which we have in our country, and especially in the south of Europe. So yeah, so the point is, every album has a theme which I decide to tackle and write all about it. The next album is gonna be a concept, another concept, and again, it's another chapter of its own, and usually no two releases are connected to another when it comes to release, because I have like this endless library in my mind of themes to tackle, but I keep expanding on it throughout the entirety of the album, and I don't go from one thing to another usually in the same album. I just stick to the same thing and just keep expanding on it.
You live in quite a religious country.
Country.
In Malta. So how has that affected you or your lyrics, and how do you look upon religion yourself?
Well, I have no respect for religion. That's and living in a country like Malta certainly strengthened over years my approach. When I was younger, like most younglings around those times, I was a person of faith, a strong faith at that. But eventually, the questions started seeping in, and the answers were not to be found. And sooner or later, I went like, okay, this is rubbish. this is rubbish. So, and that was from the faith angle. Then obviously I had to look towards the religion angle, the actual dogma, the actual system. 90% of all locals are baptized, who are born in this country. It's a rite of passage, even if you don't care about it at all. I know people who had their kid baptized and never showed up to church ever again. I went to a massive argument about my own kid, and eventually I ended up having him baptized. Didn't show up for it, but my kid is baptized for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
Because I don't agree with it, but that's a level of hell which I don't want my kid to have.
No.
So at least he's baptized, so that's out of the question. Shut up, he's Christian. Leave him alone now.
Yeah. Would it affect him in some way if you didn't do it?
It might.
Yeah.
It might. It might not, because with an ever increase of expats and with an ever more secular approach increasing, the secularism in our country is slowly increasing. Maybe it reaches a critical mass by the time it's old enough for him to matter, and it wouldn't have mattered at all. But I wasn't willing to bet those hedges. Not with the current society Malta is in right now, and. I simply don't respect it, because it creates a moral high ground with no basis whatsoever. It's the good old because I said so approach, and I can't respect it. It doesn't make sense. Not in my world anyway. It does not. And when it comes to my music, which I created. Of course, there was an element of rebellion when it started, but at this point in time, it does not matter. For the most part, I don't get a lot of flack about it from the more conservative people around my life. Maybe they frown upon it, but for the most part, they just avoid the subject completely, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah. But have you met any type of resistance or from?
Oh yeah. The closest were literally family members. They almost damn near ruined my marriage, and it was hell, and they went to talk to exorcists about the issue, and even the exorcists went like, he's just a kid making heavy music, get over it, Even these guys, which are supposed to be the modern level of witch doctors, thought that this claim was bullshit.
Yeah.
But it still did a significant amount of damage. Within my family, and it led to a lot of tension, a lot of strictness, like how you should talk and whatnot. Sooner or later, these people we didn't meet anymore under the same roof, And this was family, or family to be, because this was from my wife's side, or back then my fiance's side. So that was difficult, I never thought it would happen, not from such a close. Not from so close to home, I have to be honest, but it did. It's over now, we're talking about 10 years ago now, so it's...
Has it healed?
Right.
You mean
No, absolutely not. It's still a gaping, gashing wound, but nobody is approaching that wound. Nobody's healing the wound, but nobody's throwing salt in it. So,
okay.
It's all right. Just leave it be. Maybe one day it just forms the scars, and maybe even. But I couldn't care less. I didn't stop writing my music. It didn't stop. It put a lot of pressure and strain on my private life, but eventually that thing went past. So now we're back to it. I never had a problem with my wife on that aspect. Of course, she supports me a lot in what I do. And sometimes, the in-laws might yap something about it, but it's just noise in the wind. Yeah. So it's nothing. Yeah. It's all right. It is what it is. Again, conservative backgrounds, highly dogmatic Christian background, everything which is not within their little niche. It's just pure evil and blasphemy. That's what it is. We didn't have in Malta the equivalent of the satanic panic, but we had other issues. We had the people born with what is it, the mortal sin, we had people which were condemned to hell, but for different reasons, and, their political stuff, and I'm not touching that.
Okay. Certain things should just be.
Yeah.
Let it be. Yeah. So I was wondering, as we're speaking of people in Malta and so on, how is the metal scene here?
The metal scene, on the other hand, is lovely.
Yeah?
It's brilliant, most of it you'll see here, but, especially after COVID hit. I'm not saying that before it was not. That's absolutely not what I mean. It was great and it was strong, but especially after COVID, bunch of bands cropped up from nowhere, which is a good thing, you know, young people and young metalheads coming here from you, a bunch of fresh faces, a bunch of fresh faces in the crowd and on the stage, and it's brilliant, a new level of energy. It's, especially right now, I think we're one of the best points in time, I think, in my memory, in my lifetime, for the local metal scene. We have bands as young as 16-year-olds going all the way up to, let's just say, veterans in the scene. You know, I don't want to call them old, you know, but the gap is massive. You know, the gap is massive. And we have a huge amount of bands per capita. I mean, doesn't beat Finland or Sweden or the Nordic countries, of course, but all considering, it's a huge proportion of bands, of metal bands, you know, and across all genres as well. So we can go from punk to thrash to black metal, obviously, which are on the increase. There was a point in time it was just me, but now there's more of them. A lot of death metal of varying styles. So we're talking from brutal death to like Morbid Angel type of death metal. So it's brilliant. You know, right now I think we have the largest diversity and the largest number of metal music happening for as long as I can remember, you know, and people show up for it. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's exciting. And they all play here, I guess, at the Garage.
Oh yeah, sooner or later, you know, there might be alternate venues here and there. Maybe some bigger auditorium or theaters happening, especially this last year we had a few of those, but for all intents and purposes, this is the place where you would expect almost automatically for a band to perform. I lost count how many times I performed here, you know, and I opened once even for a festival was still being organized by the owner of the place, and you know, I was the first band showing up. You know, there's it helps a sense of community to have a place to go.
Absolutely.
I mean, and it is a small country, so we can only have so many venues without starting to cause clashing problems anyway. So even from a logistical point of view, it just makes perfect sense. Could have been somewhere else, but it happened to be here, and it's brilliant.
Yeah. And speaking of being on stage, are you touring? I saw that you were stopped touring a while. Yeah, I've read that on your Instagram.
I stopped performing a while back.
Yeah?
Yes. It was way before the pandemic. I announced it here, and because let's just say it stopped being fun.
Okay. Yeah. Understood.
It started getting really tedious, and that's actually one of the reasons why I don't perform as frequently nowadays locally, because you have to think of a new set, and you have to send the music to the other musicians, and maybe they have time, maybe they don't have time to relearn a whole new set. There's the whole organizing bit. I used to take too much on myself as well. So for a while, it just stopped being fun, you know. Didn't mean I stopped writing and composing music, because being in the studio is totally different. I'm there every day. Sometimes I'm writing, sometimes I'm just simply playing, just gaming on the same PC which I use. But that's the little world. Today I'm gonna grab the guitar, boom, I have a song down, you know. So that's all right. That was easy enough. But the whole thing of getting on the stage, preparing the makeup, the set, the sound check, everything started becoming a little bit too much, and a little bit too extra. So for a while I just went like, okay, I stop. You know, that's it. What happened then was the pandemic.
Yeah.
This is what happened. Around March, just before we had the major lockdown in Malta, some countries already were under lockdown, and I think we weren't in a lockdown just yet, but a lot of stores and shops and companies were already sending people home and staying at home, and people were already getting bored out of their skulls. And obviously, this is my music which we were talking about, so I know how to play it, and I was doing this whole playing, using vocals and using the guitars, which I didn't do before. Before I used to be just a vocalist on stage, and everybody else is doing guitars. But I thought, hey, let's just try to learn to do this. Maybe it becomes handy in the future. You know, I didn't know. I still wasn't considering to perform live ever again, but the attempt, and maybe subconsciously I suppose, because I was doing it nonetheless. And one day, like, I just announced it 5 days before. I said, you know what, I'm gonna stick one of my cell phones, put it on a tripod or something, plug everything, and let's just do a show for everybody who was at home. It did. It happened. It worked. I'm on record the first guy to do it in Malta, across all genres. And from there, I had some opportunities to do it again on a shorter scale, because this was like a 40-minute set. But this time I had other opportunities to do like a song or two maximum, and I was like, I did the same thing for Metal Injection for their Slay at Home series, which they were doing every month. Then I did it again for a locally organized festival with a bunch of bands. Again, this is all online for Grimfest. By that point in time, I was already doing the whole full rehearsing thing for a live show shtick anyway. And then there was a cancellation for a band when live shows started happening again. So we're talking late 2021. I was called like, hey, can you do this show? Like, okay, when is it? It's in 9 days time. I went, screw it, I'll do it. I'll do it. And I'm back to it. The rest is history. The rest is history. I did more shows. I did an actual tour, and yeah, and I'm still planning on other shows anyway now. So.
Oh, are you? So when can we see you on anything?
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. It will be next June.
Okay, cool.
That's the idea.
And where would you like go on tour?
Oh, it's here. It's here. Now, touring abroad this year is going to be very, very difficult because financially speaking, because well, like I said, I've got loans, I've got expenses. You know, I can only fan out my wallet so much, unfortunately, as it is. So this year, I won't say there won't be any foreign shows because it's a never say never situation. But a whole tour, multiple dates over multiple cities and multiple countries, I think it's close to impossible this year. Considering 2024, of course, but I think 2023 will be out of the equation as it stands right now.
Yeah. So what would you say, just talking a little bit about the ideologies, and would you say that the ideology or prophecy or the lyrics is most important to you than the music? What would you say your focus is there?
For a long time, my lyrics were more intimate because I didn't publish them. So for all and they're in Maltese anyway. So most people will not understand them. I didn't publish them anyway. So the few people which would understand them, local people, will not have known what I'm talking. So it was a bit of an intimate thing, which meant it was very personal. What I was writing, I wasn't willing to share it. That approach changed over the years, but back then, at least, it didn't matter much. So for the most part, I would say that the music is the strongest thing when it comes to Sahar. You know, that's why I have a lot of instrumental tracks as well. You know, they will hold a title, and maybe they would even have lyrics written for them which never got recorded. Most of the time it happens as well, but sometimes I go like, okay, this track is good. The riffs are great. I don't want to risk spoiling it with lyrics, if that makes any sense. Some people would disagree with that, but in my case, sometimes. On the other hand, an album like Tijrif Tal-Junus, which, like I said, covered some really, really heavy topics, and I did a lot of research about it, and I did a lot of focus. Yeah, at the very least, the lyrics are going to be on par with the music. Maybe not dominating them, but they will be on par on the music. So sometimes, yes, it will be important for me to have those lyrics be on the forefront. But at the end of the day, I do still think that it's about the music in itself and not what I am shrieking in a microphone.
The name of your next album,
yeah.
You were writing on Instagram that it was coming from some Maltese legendary.
Yes.
Can you please tell us about that?
Even my name, even Sahar's name starts from the same legend. So this is about my namesake becoming made manifest and turned into an actual album with its lyrical content. Now, to follow up with the previous question, this one is going to have a lot of significance in its lyrical content because it should be accompanied even with a short novel, which is in Maltese. So, so I'll have to hire some translators for that job. Yeah, but I'm taking the local legendary from where it's based upon. To put it simple, the shortest version of it is basically it's like this guy, which was a member of the religious order. He fell into a heresy, became a witch, was sent in front of the Inquisitor disappeared in front of the Inquisitor's eyes, popped up in Sicily, started teasing him with messages, you know, like literally, like you expected something on local Instagram, like, hey, right, remember me, and that's what he did.
Oh.
He started sending messages every once in a while, and then, as the legend goes, he tried to turn himself into the reincarnated Antichrist of sorts. Obviously, didn't work.
No.
No, that's a legend story. The reality is unfortunately a bit more simple and less more entertaining. Basically, it was a guy who owned a lot of lands, and they were basically stolen off him by claim of him being a heretic. He did escape to Sicily, but not by disappearing. He just smuggled himself outside the country, maybe to live the rest of his life in Sicily. They did burn an effigy of him locally as a symbolic gesture of his execution, and they did take his lands. One of them is actually the summer resort of the Prime Minister.
Oh.
That's how deep entrenched the story is within reality and the legendary of it.
So speaking of a little bit Antichrist and so on, so what is Satanism to you?
It's just another structure of fate, like I mentioned before. You know, I couldn't care less much about it. From again a dogmatic point, even these like the Satanic Temple in the UK, they're basically atheists, which somehow follow. You know, don't give me that rubbish. You know, I mean, you do you, of course, but at the end of the day, it's still a structure of fate which you're following. There's still a level of dogmas, a set of rules which are presented around an entity. I don't do that. You know. From any kind of god down to the fucking flying spaghetti monster, they're all, of course, as a joke religion, but it's still religion nonetheless. I follow no structure of faith whatsoever. I'm an atheist, and that's what I am. So Satan, God, anything in between does not enter into my life equation. Of course, I can understand why it would be associated with my music, and I don't deny that, not in the slightest. You know, I mean, my very logo has like a pentagram hidden in it, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But at the end of the day, it's a visual cue. It's an image. It's a structure which I brush upon, but no, not embrace fully anyway. So yeah, it's I've been associated with it before, like I mentioned anyway, and I'm not gonna play a defensive position and go like, no, I know which genre I play. I know which people I'm associated with all the risks that brings, you know, so to speak. Again, it's I'm not gonna change my genre for the underlying satanic themes that black metal encompasses. You know, I mean. I do mention the devil in my own music sometimes, not praising or anything of that sort, but if I'm going on a metaphysical description of, say, the end of the world, and obviously there's a little horned critter coming out from from the depths of the underworld, yeah, so be it.
It belongs to the music.
It belongs to it belongs. It's part and package with it, and that's what it is. Yeah, but that's where it starts, and frankly, that's where it ends for me.
Yeah. So can I ask, you write so nice things on Instagram. I really love your text and everything. And something you wrote, a quote from your Instagram post: "Play with fire and you get burned, but you don't die. What happens to your body and soul?"
Yeah, it's a teaser for, again, my next album, about what happens with you if you achieve this ultimate shape and form which you cannot be destroyed, and yet you got stuck in this perpetual flame. That's what it is. There's nothing too philosophical happening behind it, you know. I mean, the thoughts are there, of course, but it's part of a more broader arc or theme or concept which that thing is part of. At some point in time, the same character, before he ends up on fire like a human torch, he will meet some entities which are also based in local folklore, and they will give him this gift of everlasting knowledge after he travels, you know, way beyond the lands of Mordor, so to speak. You know, makes Malta look like the largest country in the world, you know, especially with all the underground networks which I mentioned, which are based, again, on local legendary. So all I did is create this persona, and I just added more fluff to it. That's what I did. A little more flair, a little more fire in this case as well, you know, because that's what happens in the local legendary when they find him, and allegedly all the pieces of his dismembered body are coming back into shape and taking this larger form. They just set it on fire. So that's what happens, and like, okay, you're the Antichrist now, you're almost managed, and you're stuck in flame. So what now?
Yeah.
it leaves this trail of a question, this mind of hopelessness, which I do mention in a lot of my music, to be honest, because it's a more darker approach towards the fear of the unknown and the basic question that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or next year. We simply don't know. We simply don't know. And it's basically a more creative way of tackling that existential horror that in reality we might deny it, we might use fate to coddle ourselves into sleeping every night, not knowing how we're going to wake up the next day. In my case, I just write lyrics and set old hermits on fire.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much, Sahar, for joining us, and very good luck with your musical career.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
it was great.
job.
It was great. It was really great.
All right.
Promotion for the garage, promotion for Sahar,
Yes.
promotion for the movie.
Yep. Yep.
Small t-shirts we put out on Instagram.
Name of the movie might be, yeah.
Old movie with.
That's a line for Ben.
Could be.
I'm not criticizing it, and where do I know that line specifically from?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I pick up pictures? Can you move a little bit to your right? You have this on the wall.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
like
cool.
things so much. Yes.